Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 375.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because one of the more important things that could happen in your journey as you build cash flow is that there could come a point in your journey in which, well, the path that you're on actually needs to change. Maybe you think, I'm going to go do this, but over time, something else may come to the surface that, well, it's just a better path. So we can't ever get locked in on a particular strategy, but definitely we can get locked in on a goal. And I have with me today someone who is in the process of doing those types of things, but more importantly, he has definitely proven himself in one industry, but he's on his way to doing many more bigger things. And I want you to hear about his journey. So today I have with me none other than Steve Alten. Many of you may know him from many of the 16 books that he has authored, one of which is being made into a movie right now. The title of that one is Meg. You may also know that there is a book by the title of Dog Training the American Male, which actually sounds, well, funny and very appropriate as well. And he's working on a new book right now called Undisclosed. What's interesting is that a writer's journey is just that, a journey full of twists and turns. And I think there's going to be lots of lessons that we're all going to be able to learn as we go out there to build our cash flow from Mr. Steve Alten. Steve, you there?
I'm here.
How you doing today?
I apologize if it sounds like a kennel on here. If it gets too bad, I'll let these two dogs out.
Gotcha. Totally understood. I recently got two puppies myself, like two at the same time. I don't know what I was thinking. So this being your first time here, what I like to do is, I like to ask everybody the same question the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. So I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, you know, Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. And I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, entrepreneurs, we occasionally think of ourselves, you know, getting dressed up, maybe put on tights and capes and swooping and saving our customers or with our products and services in some way, shape, or form, improving their life. But also, like superheroes, entrepreneurs have a beginning. So if you think about Spider-Man, at one point, he was just a college kid going to school, trying to get good grades, and then he needed some money, so he was taking photos. One day he gets bit, something happens, he gets bit by a spider, and then he has that superhero moment to decide, what am I going to do with all of this that I have now discovered? So my question to you is as follows. Before the 16 books, before the idea of having, you know, one of yours made into a movie, which I think is amazing, before before even the spouse, before even the nice puppies or dogs in the background, before all of that, my question is, who is Steve Alten?
Well, he's pretty much the same guy. I'm still struggling, but care about other people and want to do something with my life. That's, I've always been a competitive person, and my original love was basketball and was going to get into coaching and ended up opening a few businesses. And when I was struggling at the most, came across a Time magazine article in 1995, which was on the cover was the Mariana Trench, which is the deepest part of the ocean. And that spurred on the idea for my first book, which was Meg, about a giant prehistoric great white shark called a megalodon. So I'd say, who was I before? I'm pretty much the same person I was then. Just more people know me through my books.
Gotcha. Totally understood. Now, did you say basketball? Were you playing a coach or what?
Played a little bit in high school and college, and I wanted to coach, and I had gone to the University of Delaware for a master's degree and had an opportunity to coach the JV team there, and went on to Temple University for a doctorate degree just so I could work with John Chaney, the Hall of Fame basketball coach. And I was a professional student for a while. I went to school for 10 straight years on graduate assistantships just to avoid the workplace and get as much basketball coaching experience as I could. And ended up leaving that behind for a business opportunity.
Really? Okay, so it sounds like basketball is a deep passion. Yes.
Yeah, I took it as far as a slow white Jewish guy could take it.
And now you're going to tell me you're like 5'5" too. That would have been actually.
No, I used to be 6'3", but I've shrunk.
Okay, got it. Totally understood. Now, what could make you give up your passion? What was so enticing?
Well, I had my last year writing my dissertation, I had taken a job as a wholesale water treatment salesman and just hated it with a passion. And selling is not something that you do to people, but you do for people. And
whoa. Say that again. That was good.
Well, the reason I was a lousy salesperson was I had a bad attitude.
Okay.
It wasn't bad. It was just that I felt that I was maybe ripping people off because it was a high ticket item. And then I went to a person's home who I did a presentation. It probably wasn't a very good one. And she bought the system, the water treatment system, which was like a $3,500 unit with reverse osmosis. It was a good unit. And I asked her, why are you buying this? I was kind of shocked because she had given me no buying signals. And she said, well, here where we live in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, the cancer rate is horrible. And we're convinced it's from the water. And your system takes out this stuff. So, of course I can afford that. And that changed my attitude. And when my attitude changed, actually it was two things that changed my attitude. That and something else, which was there was a repo place out behind the building where we worked. And one day, a friend of mine and I decided we had some time to kill before the sales meeting started. So we went to the repo place, and I convinced the repo lot owner to let me test drive a Corvette. And the only car I had ever driven up until that point was my 71 Chevy Malibu convertible, which my dad bought me when I was 17. And here I'm, probably 25, 26 years old. And I test drove the Corvette, and if you've ever driven a Corvette before, it's a race car. And I test drove it and came back and I said, I will own you. And that forced me to set a goal. Setting a goal is not a wish list. Setting a goal, as I've learned from practical experiences, you set a beginning date and end date, figure out exactly what you need to do to accomplish that goal, and then just get started. And that goal becomes your every reason for living. You wake up to it, you go to sleep to it, you think about it all the time. And that forced me to change my ways as a salesperson. Instead of coming in with a negative attitude when I knocked on the door because I hated my job, suddenly I saw this as a means to an end. And so it changed my attitude. I was happy. I was smiling. I was joyful. I was doing things for people, not to them. And I became the best salesperson in that office. And 3 months later, they offered me an opportunity to open up my own office in Delaware, which I did with a partner. And when my next birthday rolled around, I bought a new Corvette, not a repoed one.
Nice. Okay, got it. All right, that makes sense. So and this was still selling the same water filter.
Yeah,
Sounds like.
Except we owned the company. Now that was a roller coaster ride in itself because I used my coaching experience to coach my salespeople. And because I had failed as a salesperson before I was successful, I could relate to them what it was like to go through the failure and what was necessary to do to become successful. And so I was a very good sales manager, number one in the country. In fact, our first year, we had more sales than any other office. And, we expanded too quickly and things went sour pretty quickly for other reasons. But, it was definitely a learning experience. I mean, here I was 25, 26 years old, and I think our company grossed $7 million our first year and spent $7.2 million our first.
Understood. Okay, got it. So from that point, how do we go from selling water device to writing? I'm sensing there's a gap that I'm missing. Like, at what point do you go, I know, I'll just write instead?
Well, I'd gone through 2 years of hell as the owner of that particular company with a partner. I no longer trusted my partner for a variety of reasons, and ended up basically giving him the company just to get my name off of everything, and opened up a similar office in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, because I wanted to be near the nice weather. And I was married at the time and ended up getting a divorce and meeting the woman that I would settle down with for the next 25 plus years. But things were a struggle down in Florida. And I ended up bouncing around from job to job. And until I read that Time magazine article, that's what that became the next focus of a goal setting.
Okay.
And I set the goal that I was going to write this book, and I was going to be a best-selling author. And, I tell people when I speak in schools, and I speak in schools a lot, how do you write a 400-page book if you've never written anything before? And the answer is, well, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer to that is you eat an elephant a bite at a time. And you write a manuscript a page at a time. And so if you write 2 or 3 pages a night, and I had to work at nights because I had a day job. So I would work all day and come home and start working at 10 o'clock at night till about 3 in the morning and on weekends. And I wrote 2 or 3 pages a night, and in 100 to 125 days, I had a 400-page manuscript.
So, okay, the obvious question is what was in this Time magazine article that would inspire such commitment and dedication?
Well, when I was younger, I had read the book Jaws, and that inspired me to read a lot of books about great white sharks. And there was always a little blurb about Carcharodon megalodon, or Meg for short, the 70-foot prehistoric cousin of the great white shark. And these were real creatures that dominated the oceans as little as 10,000 to 1 million years ago. And so when I read that Time magazine article on the Mariana Trench, this 1,500-mile-long unexplored gorge 7 miles beneath the waves, I married the idea of Megalodon being down there to the trench, and immediately went to the library and did research, because there was no internet in 1995. I realized I have a good idea here. This can be an exciting thriller, that megalodons are still alive in the Mariana Trench, and somebody goes down there and manages to free one from its purgatory, and all hell breaks loose. And so I set the goal that I was going to work on this book and get it done in 6 months and take it from there. Got
it. So it's kind of like Free Willy gone bad.
Something like that.
Okay, got it. All right, this is interesting. Now, the idea of writing a book, had that ever come to you before, or you just said, I'm going to be the one to write a book? Have you ever thought about writing a book before that moment?
Yeah, I had tried to write a book on sales, sort of like a novel that encouraged people, to use goal setting and things like that, but nothing ever. No novel. This was my first novel. Got
it. So is your family full of writers? I'm just trying to, the idea, like when I read a magazine or if I'm looking at something, the natural inclination isn't go, oh, I'll write a book. Usually there's a seed planted somewhere. Somebody, it's like you dreamed of being a writer before?
I had thought about it. Yeah, I had contemplated switching from physical education to journalism at one point, but it didn't work out,
Got it.
and so I stayed with the athletics for a while.
Got it. But and you still didn't even write a book about basketball.
No, and the first trait of being a writer is you're a reader, and I was a reader. I read a
I see.
lot, so that was important.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Got it. All right. So this is making sense. So you write the book, and then what was it like going through? Well, let me rephrase. There's always a moment at some point in the journey in which we realize and recognize, hey, I have something here that's useful, and I can choose to use it for good or evil. So what I often call the superhero moment, where you realize I've got this thing and I could share it with people, and that would be like awesome for them. What was that moment like, or where was that in this journey for you?
Well, I had the manuscript, but I had no means of getting it published. So I went out and bought a book on how to get published. And they said that what you do is you need an agent to represent you, because a publisher's not going to accept the manuscript, unsolicited. So in order to get an agent, you have to send a 2-page letter out to them talking about your book, and, hopefully they'll be interested. So I sent out, being in sales, I played the numbers game. I sent out a letter to everybody who handled fiction, which was about 60 or 70 different literary agents.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard back from one person who was interested out of the 60 or 70. And he was an agent in LA, and he thought that Meg would make a good book in the movie, but he said, it's not ready yet. It needs a lot of editing. He said, editing a book is like cutting a fish. You chop off its head, you chop off its tail, and you start with the meat in the middle. And he said, I will help you edit the book, but I'm going to have to charge you. And he wanted $6,000 to edit the book. And I didn't have $6,000, but I had my old Chevy Malibu 71 convertible, and I had a few other things to sell and borrow some money here and there, and managed to get him paid. And we edited the book together. And then in the meantime, I took a job working at a wholesale meat company as their general manager, sales manager, and then became general manager. And then on Friday the 13th in 1996, my good luck day, I went to work at the meat company and found out that they had fired me. That I guess I was too focused on writing the book.
Mm.
And there were a few other reasons. But I went home. We had no money in the bank, and my wife was upset. And I said, honey, this is the best thing that could have happened, because now I get to work on my second book. And she about threw a frying pan at my head. And 6 days later, buoyed by the fact that we had a first look movie deal at Disney's Hollywood Pictures, Meg was taken out to the 6 biggest publishing houses in the country at the time, and started a bidding war, and ended up getting a 2-book deal for Meg and another book with Bantam Doubleday.
Did you say 6 days later?
6 days later, and it was a 7-figure deal for 2 books.
Okay. So did she apologize for the frying pan?
Well, she never threw it. She was thinking about it, but
wow. Okay. Got it. As you tell your story, there's something that comes very, very clear and true. Is you will do whatever it takes to make what you want to have happen. There's no job too small in order to support the dream that you want to see happen. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I've sort of always had that drive, and I guess you have it or you don't.
Well, here's what I mean. Some people wouldn't have been willing to take the job and bounce from job to job or work you sold stuff. I run into people all the time who don't want to make the necessary sacrifice, but that just seems like it doesn't even seem like you struggle with the idea of doing it, because you just go, okay, well, cool. I, sell a car and sell my stuff and whatever it takes. How do you get to a point to where you can do that so easily?
I guess I've just done it over my whole life, and it seems like I'm still doing it. I mean, at that point, you would think that I was on the road to success, and I was. Meg became a New York Times bestseller. The foreign rights were sold by Doubleday to 30 other countries. We had a movie that was not in production, but they had optioned it, and things were going well. And I was working on my second book, and then the roller coaster went down. We had just bought a new house. We were living in a rental, and the rights to the second book were reverted. Banner Doubleday was going through a transition by being bought by a big German conglomerate called Bertelsmann. And the outgoing president was trying to save her job, and she started dumping contracts. And mine was one. And so I had a New York Times bestseller, and they're canceling my second book 2 weeks before I'm supposed to get paid $800,000. And I realized we weren't going to be able to afford the house. We weren't going to be able to keep the cars, and we could keep them for a little bit, but I had to reinvent my goals quickly. And so the second book was about the Mayan calendar's doomsday prophecy, which I wrote in 1998. So I was quite ahead of the 2012 curve. And it wasn't ready. But what had happened was I had an editor who was guiding me, and he was trying to guide me into writing another underwater book. They were trying to make me into the next Peter Bensley, and that's not what I wanted to be. I didn't want to just write underwater stories. But I did, because I wanted to get paid, and it wasn't the book that I wanted it to be, and it wasn't the book that they wanted it to be, and then they got bought out. And so, it was a bad experience, and they gave me sort of a black eye to cover themselves, because why would you let go an author who just had a New York Times bestseller, and the paperback's coming out in 3 months? Meanwhile, the movie deal, the president of Hollywood Pictures was fired, and when a new incoming president comes into a studio, he lets go all of the past projects, or else they'll make him look bad if they succeed. And so the movie reverted. So suddenly I had no publishing deal and no movie deal. But wow. I've got my ability to set a goal, and so I did. And I quickly penned the sequel to the first novel, Meg, which was The Trench. Sold it for a lot less money, but at least got something that would keep me going. And then we had a sue to get the rights back to the second book, which we got the rights back to, and I eventually rewrote it, called Domain. And Domain was about the Mayan calendar's doomsday prophecy. And interesting story about Domain. It did okay in the States, but about 10 years later, around the 2012 thing, it took off, and my foreign agent was getting a lot of offers, and we sold it to Spain, a small publishing house in Spain, and it rocketed to #1. And that spurred a bunch of other foreign deals, so that my biggest selling book overseas was the one that got canceled. Okay. So you never know where success is going to come and how it's going to come. And if I hadn't sued to get the rights back to that book and rewritten it entirely, I would have not got my biggest foreign seller to date.
Wow. Okay, so there's a book out there called The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster by Darren Hardy, I believe, and you're describing it so well right now, because it's up and down, and it's really, really high and really, really low. So take us to the point, because is this common for writers? I mean, what you're experiencing? One of the things to be aware of, everyone, is the fact that your entrepreneurial journey will not be a straight line. The way that your business, or the idea of the product or the service, the concept that you have today will rarely be the exact same thing that you see 3 years from today. Not because you got it wrong, but because you're listening and you're getting it right. What do I mean by that? I mean, your customers are going to tell you. They're going to inform you. They're going to help you shape exactly what it is that they want. And if you're listening, all you got to do is continue to make the changes. And as you make those changes, you begin to get toward the success you were originally after. It's simply called the feedback loop. You must be in that feedback loop in order to put yourself in a position so that you have a shot at understanding and becoming the person that you ultimately need to be so that your business can serve whom you want it to serve. If you want to get more information about concepts like the feedback loop, grab a copy of my book, Cash Flow Diary, 10 Steps to Creating Wealth in Any Economy. I'll give you, yes, you, listening right now, a free PDF copy by going over to cashflowdiary.com/free book. Again, that's cashflowdiary.com/free book, and you can grab a PDF copy. I look forward to hearing what you have to say about it. Now, let's get back to the rest of the interview. As you know, someone who's
I don't know. It's common for me apparently, but and the roller coaster goes on because I have successes and I think that all my books are good and the writing continues to get better and better. So that is not the roller coaster. The writing quality is getting better, but the experiences have been rough. I was able to get a movie deal with the help of a friend at New Line Cinema, and then they hired a screenwriter, and he wrote a completely different story as to what I wrote, and they canceled that contract. And then, so I've been left at the altar twice. Then a friend of mine who I'd met was a producer, Belle Avery, and I optioned the rights to Meg to her. And Belle went through hell to get Meg re-optioned to get, but what she did was she got the movie financed through some contacts in China, a Chinese production company called Gravity, which is an excellent company. And so they, with a script that I had written with her, raised $150 million and took that to Warner Brothers a couple summers ago, and they optioned it, and the movie was off and running and finally greenlit. So it took 3 studios to do that, and I think it'll definitely be worth it because they've got a terrific cast and a terrific director. John Turteltaub is the director. He did the National Treasure movies, and Jason Statham is the star. Ruby Rose is in there, Li Bing Bing, and an international cast. So that had just finished filming, but through all that, I had managed to get the rights back to the original book, Meg, and there were 2 other books that I had written that were published by a small publishing house that didn't do a very good job with it. And that was Sharkman and Dog Training the American Male, which was written under a pen name, L.A. Knight. And so I wanted those books to be successful, and I had the rights to Meg. So I decided that I was going to open my own publishing house with some partners a couple years ago. And, that Meg would be the driving force behind it, but the reason that I wanted to open my own publishing house is because, I've had some good publishers and they've been very supportive, but not supportive in promoting the books. And I end up spending all my money promoting the books myself.
I see.
So I felt that I always have to pay for my own cover art because I'm very particular about my cover art. And so I felt that by opening up my own publishing house, I could control these variables. And, we re-released Meg in paperback, and it's got a terrific front cover. And, hopefully when the movie comes out a year from now, sales will rocket on it. And they've been doing pretty steady. And we have new covers for Sharkman, which will be released when we get a TV deal for it.
Nice.
And Dog Training the American Male has not picked up yet, but we have high hopes for it. So, and in April, short months from now, our first hardback will be released called Undisclosed, and that's the true story about UFOs and ETs.
So you've got each one of these books is like an asset in and of itself. And, but you're bringing up something that's really important that I think a lot of people miss, even when it comes to real estate or any other business for that matter, is it's one thing to be able to write a book. It's another to be able to publish it and get it sold or promoted, I should say.
True. Yes.
So go ahead.
And that was another reason that I wanted to open the publishing company because, here I am 4 international bestsellers, 4 New York Times bestsellers, a movie deal and stuff. And still, I'm still writing on spec.
Right.
I never know if my book's going to be published. I never know how much it's going to be published for. My advances are steadily going down, as all authors are. You've got ebooks out there and a whole different competition on that. And, I've got to be able to make enough money to keep my family going. And it takes me sometimes 6 months to a year to write a book. So if I'd gotten $100,000 advance on one book, and then the next book, it's $45,000. Well, why? Well, your last book didn't sell that much. Well, you didn't promote it. If you're not going to promote the book, how people are going to know it's out there?
Interesting.
I've got a newsletter that goes to like 20,000 fans, but that's not going to be enough to make it a bestseller. I need some help promoting the book. And if you're not, I'm at the point where I think there's different levels of authors. There's the top 5%, which are always bestsellers. And then there's about another 15% under that have been bestsellers, but, are in that top percentage, but not the top. So it's still a struggle. And then below that are various stages of people that are struggling to get published and get noticed and stuff like that. So I'm in that second phase that I want to get in the first phase. In order to do that, I need to break the mold that I'm in now. I can't convince a publisher to put the assets behind my books until I can prove to them that I deserve the assets. But that's sort of a bad catch-22. So I know that Meg is going to be a huge bestseller again because the movie's going to be huge. It really is.
Right. I get that.
But in the meantime, my books are very good.
Yes. Well, you're bringing up a really, it's a valid point because a number of entrepreneurs go, well, but my product is great. My property is awesome. All of these things I'm doing, they're great once I get people through the door, but having that skill set of promotion is definitely something that's there. And it sounds like in the writer's world, that's controlled at the publishing level, and your goal is to gain more of that control. So would you say that even though you write the books, is it a better business to be the writer or the publisher? What's your thought process?
Well, I don't know yet. It's still a work in progress. This first book will be a huge test because we started off re-releasing Meg, and it's done well. But the hardbacks, you get paid more. So this will be our first hardback together, and we're also publishing someone else's hardback too, which I edited. So they're both coming out, and they're both extraterrestrial UFO stories. His is nonfiction. Dr. Stephen Greer, the foremost authority on extraterrestrials. His book is called Unacknowledged, and it's coming out with a documentary attached to it. And my book is the novel side of that, called Undisclosed. So we'll see how both of those books do.
You've mentioned a couple of times and I'm just curious, is this as a normal marketing strategy to have some sort of other medium supporting it? Like you said, a documentary, you've said movies, you've mentioned, I think one of them, a TV show or something. And I'm like, is that a normal path for books, or to get them noticed is to also accompany something else with them like that?
Well, it's a difficult path, but it's definitely one that can succeed. And it takes a lot of luck, and it takes the right people, the right connections. And, I've been building that over the last 20 years. So hopefully there's a lot of seeds that have been sown, and hopefully I'll be able to reap a nice crop from it in the coming years. And yes, that can be a driving force behind a product, but it's not, it's sort of like saying, and people have said this to me, oh, I know how you can be successful. Get on Oprah. Well, really,
Was that all?
that's like saying, well, I know how you can get a lot of money. Win the lottery. But you've got to plan out these stages of success and hope that you get a shot at the plate so that you can hit the home run. And, a lot of years have been spent trying to get up the plate. And I've been up the bat a number of times, and I've hit a number of home runs. And we'll see what the next one is. I think the book that comes out in April, Undisclosed along with Unacknowledged, I think those two books are going to be very successful because they tell the real story that has been covered up for 70 years of lies about extraterrestrials and UFOs. And what's amazing is that what had happened was I had written a book, the third in the Mayan calendar series, called Phobos, Mayan Fear. And there was a section of it, Jay, that dealt with extraterrestrials. So I do heavy research into all my books. And I researched extraterrestrials and found the number one guy behind that was a guy who had briefed two presidents and members of Congress and members of the UN. And his name was Dr. Stephen Greer. And he had something in 2001 called the Disclosure Project, where he had brought up about 20 witnesses, part of the military intelligence agencies and stuff, that had seen and been exposed to UFOs. And I wrote to him and said, can I get your permission to use excerpts from your interviews? And he said, yes. So I sent them a book when it was done, and they really loved the book, and he and his wife. And they invited me to dinner in December of 2013, my wife and I. 2 days before we were supposed to meet them for dinner, we saw UFOs. I'm not making this up. I'm not trying to promote the book by saying this, but naturally it does. But we were driving home from going to the movies on a Saturday night, and we look up in the sky, and moving above us, several thousand feet above us, are in staggered pairs, are spaceships. I mean, we're blown away. We're standing by the car watching these things pass over. So naturally, the first thing we discussed at dinner, 2 or 3 nights later, was, hey, we saw UFOs. And he said, well, that's a common occurrence for people who are meeting me for the first time. It's all about consciousness. The universe is all about consciousness. And they're checking you out. And it turned out that meeting would be the start of something much bigger that we would work on together, and culminating in these 2 books and a documentary that's coming out in April.
Got it. The journey of a writer seems interesting. Now, let me just ask this question. Do you enjoy the process of creating the book?
I love writing it. If all I could do every day was just write, I'd be very happy. But there's a lot more that goes into being an author because it's a business.
Right.
And so you're writing one book, but you're promoting another, and maybe getting another one ready for print. And you're answering fan mail, and you're creating newsletters, and I'm, dealing with some other stuff that goes along with it that's not so positive. And it's a difficult life being a writer because you're living on an island. There's nobody there to tell you what to do every day. You have to get your book done. There's nobody to tell you if it's good, bad, or indifferent. You're totally on your own senses of what is a good book and what's not. And then you've got to take this finished product and get it sold. And, there are books that I'm a perfectionist when it comes to doing the research. And so it takes me longer to write books than it does other authors because I want to get it perfect. A book like Grim Reaper End of Days was like a layered onion, and it took me 2 years to write. A book like The Shell Game took me almost 2 years to write, about the end of oil and the next 9/11 event and the last one that happened, which was a false flag. A Meg book doesn't take me that long. It may take me 6 months because I know the characters and I know the story, and I'm into the 6th one already. But a book like the one that I've been writing that I'm just finishing up this week. It's called Undisclosed, the one coming out in April. And that one took about a year. So you got to make enough money and to be able to live off of it. And unfortunately, the month is extended longer than the money in many cases. And it's tough making ends meet sometimes. So, I've done better than most, but, it's always a challenge. It's always stressful.
Yeah, I can see that. I get that. I get that a lot. I totally understand that. So, for those that have listened this far and would like to, find out more about what you've got going on and or maybe even pick up a copy of one of the books, what's going to be the best way for them to reach out?
Best way is to go to my website, www.stevealten.com. And there's a link if you want to contact me. It's the only email I've ever had. I answer everybody. My books are there on display, and you can actually read excerpts of them or watch the book trailer. There's posters and things for sale there if you're interested in giant sharks. And there's writing tips if you want to be a writer. Got it.
Excellent. Now, as we wind down, I've got one final question here, and it'll be interesting to hear your response. Let's pretend that someone listening right now is on their edge. They're on they think they want to be that entrepreneur. Let's even go so far as to say they're standing in front of the superhero outfit store. They're ready to pick out their outfit and see if they can fly. However, as things go, oftentimes when we set these goals to go after great things, we can often be confronted with that voice. It's that voice that comes up that reminds us of what we're not and what we haven't and who do we think we are and how are you ever going to sell anything? Those types of that voice. And for some people, they are related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. If that person who was listening actually committed to follow through and do exactly what you said in the next 24 to 48 hours so that they could get their business going and off the ground, what would you tell them to do?
Well, the people who love you the most are the most negative people when it comes to setting goals, because they are there to tell you every reason why you will not succeed, because they're trying to spare you the pain that they went through maybe when they decided not to succeed. So you cannot listen to the people who you care about the most, because they will bring you down. So what you have to do is arm yourself with voices that will tell you that you can do it. And those voices come in audio tapes or books. Like, the book that affected me the most in a positive way was Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Mm. That was my Bible of success. And that's the one that I required my salespeople to read before they could sell my product. And it's this one that I still reference when I talk in high schools, because I have a program called Adopt an Author, which is a free reading program that started out with a couple teachers who were reading my book in school. And now there's over 10,000 registered teachers in the program. And so I go to schools and speak at them and discuss, how to be successful with students.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I completely get it. I definitely appreciate you sharing the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship, regardless of chosen endeavor. I think all of us experience that same ups and downs, and yes, the deal's going to happen and then it doesn't, especially inside the real estate space for sure. It's funny, or at least ironic, how similar they can be. While the players may be different, the emotional effect, the ups and downs, the building the assets, all of that other stuff is definitely the same. And I appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge, insight, and wisdom here with us today at the Cashflow Diary.
I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? That means, SteveAlten.com. Why? Because at the end of the day, you heard something today that you can totally relate to. You said at least one time, yeah, that's me. I had that contract, this change, all of those things. But here's the thing that I hope you gained from listening is to keep moving, keep setting the goal, keep going forward. Because when you learn to fail fast, fail forward, and fail frequently, only then can you find the success you're looking for. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.